Hey, hey, hey. Time for an out-of-this-world story from rSpace. They say love makes fools of us all. Today on rSpace, it's not always the lie that hurts the most. It's the realization that someone you trusted never thought you'd notice. Husband cheated and thought I'd stay, so I took the house, the car, and left him with nothing. The title says it all. My husband, the man I built my life around, turned out to be a lying, cheating bastard. And the worst part? I saw the signs. I knew something was wrong, but still I held on, begged, and convinced myself that if I tried harder and gave a little more, he'd remember he loved me. I twisted myself into a version of me I barely recognized, all to keep a man who never really wanted to be kept. And now, looking back, I hate myself for it. Christ, I can't even give a good reason why I'm writing this. Maybe there's something cathartic about letting it all out. I, 26 female, met my ex-husband, Samuel, 30 male, in college. He was magnetic, the kind of guy who could make you feel like you were the only person in the world when he wanted to. I fell hard, so hard that I ignored the whispers. There were always rumors and stories about him moving from girl to girl, never staying long, but every time I asked, he laughed it off, shake his head, kiss my forehead, and tell me I was different. And like a fool, I believed him. I guess that was my fault for not paying attention to that red flag. I grew up comfortably. My parents weren't wealthy, but I never had to struggle. Samuel's background was different. He came from a home where money was always tight, where success wasn't just a goal but a necessity. It made him obsessed with proving himself. He constantly pushed forward, always grinding, as if stopping for even a moment meant failure. And I admired that about him. I wanted to be his safe place, the person who reminded him that life was more than just a race to the top. So I supported him emotionally, financially, and in every way I could. When we got married, we weren't rich, but I thought we were happy. He convinced me to quit my job as a cafe manager so I could stay home and focus on us. I thought it was a mutual decision, something we both wanted. I see now that it was just another way to make me smaller, to make me sure I had nowhere to go when he finally got tired of me. The changes came gradually, a little less affection here, a little more distance there. He started coming home late, always blaming work. He'd sigh when I tried to start a conversation, telling me he was too tired or stressed. And I understood. I told myself he was working hard for us. But then the weekends became just as bad. Our slow mornings over coffee disappeared, replaced by him glued to his laptop or finding some excuse to leave the house. And then the comments started. Why don't you go out more? Don't you have friends to visit? Why are you always home? The same man who once wanted me home was now acting like my presence was suffocating. And I started believing it. Maybe I was too clingy. Perhaps I was the problem. So I gave him space. I forced myself to go out, even when I didn't want to. I dressed up more, cooked his favorite meals, and made it myself easier and smaller. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. He grew colder and more distant, and I told myself that if I held on just a little longer and loved him a little harder, he'd come back to me. Then, one morning, after he left for a work trip, something in me snapped. I sat in our living room, staring at nothing, and it was like everything hit me all at once. Every unanswered question, every cold shoulder, every moment I convinced myself I was imagining things. Before I knew it, I was in our bedroom, tearing through our things. I yanked clothes off hangers, ripped the sheets off the bed, and knocked over the laundry basket. It wasn't like I was looking for anything in particular. I just needed the chaos around me to match what was inside me. At some point, I must have passed out. The room was still a mess when I woke up, and I felt hollow. For 2 days, I did nothing. I barely ate, barely moved. Yes, looking back, I can acknowledge that there was something up with me, but I don't think it was hard to explain why I cracked. Then, the day before he was supposed to come back, I forced myself to clean up. That's when I found it. A crumpled hotel invoice was shoved deep in the back of his sock drawer. At first, I didn't think anything of it. Maybe an old receipt, something harmless. But when I unfolded it, my stomach dropped. His name was printed right there. One night stay at a hotel not far from his office. And then I saw it. The worst part. 2 breakfast charges. I stared at it, my brain scrambling for an explanation, for something, anything, that would make this not what I knew it was. Maybe he was really hungry and decided to have twice as much food, but that wasn't the appetite of a man I thought I knew. But then, he scribbled at the bottom of handwriting that definitely wasn't his, "Love you, baby," followed by a smiley face with hearts for eyes. And just like that, there was no more pretending, no more excuses. He wasn't just distant, he He wasn't just tired, he was cheating. He had taken another woman to a hotel, gone home to me, then returned the following day to eat breakfast with her like they were some happy couple, and he dared to keep the receipt like some kind of trophy. I should have been heartbroken. I should have been shattered. But at that moment, all I felt was this deep, gut-wrenching desperation, the kind that hollowed me out from the inside, because now I had to face the truth. The man I had given everything to had never really been mine. I confronted him immediately, and looking back, that was my first mistake. I've read enough posts on here now to know that I should have gathered more evidence first, something undeniable that would have given me leverage. If I had done that, I could have filed for divorce cleanly, without all the drama that followed. But at that moment, my mind wasn't thinking of strategy or consequences. It was just raw pain and betrayal clawing at my insides, demanding to be acknowledged. He came back from his trip, utterly unaware of the storm that was me waiting for him. I was at the dining table, staring at the crumpled receipt like it had all the needed answers. My hands shook so badly I could barely keep my grip on it. As soon as he walked in, I shoved it toward him and demanded an explanation. He barely even reached. There was no panic, no attempt to deny it, not even a second of hesitation. He glanced at the paper, then shrugged, admitting to me, just like that he had been seeing someone. I remember asking him how long it had been going on, my voice so hoarse it didn't even sound like mine. He told me months. Months. We had just celebrated our 2-year wedding anniversary some months ago. So all this was going on through then, maybe even before the anniversary. I felt like the floor had been yanked out from under me. My mouth opened and closed, but nothing came out. He stood there, calm, almost bored, like I was a piece of furniture without emotions. When I finally managed to choke out why he acted like he had not just destroyed my trust, he sighed, told me I was exhausting, and that he hadn't wanted me to find out like this. I think his exact words were something like, "It's not that big of a deal." I had married a monster. I sacrificed so much for him, left my job, and reshaped my entire life to fit his needs. I had loved him completely, given him every piece of me, and now he stood in our home, looking me in the eye, telling me that his affair wasn't that big of a deal. Something inside of me cracked wide open. I remember asking him why. Why, after everything I'd done for him, why would he do this to me? And this image stuck in my head. The way his lips curled, something like that might have been a smirk as he responded, "Because I can, and because, let's be honest, you're not going anywhere." Even remembering it now, my chest hurts. It was so brutal and so matter of fact. That's when he told me, so casually, that I needed him, that I had no job, no real life outside of him. He gave me meaning, and without him, I was nothing. I saw red. I yelled. I called him out on every lie, every manipulation, every way he had chipped away at my self-worth over the years. But he didn't yell back. He didn't fight. He just grabbed his keys and walked out the door as I was screaming at his back. And then he didn't come back. Not that night, not the next night. Days passed, and I was spiraling. I called him, no answer. Texted, nothing. My mind went wild with possibilities. Was he with her? Was he planning to leave me for her? The silence was worse than any screaming match could have been. Eventually, I got desperate enough to call my father. I sobbed as I told him everything, every awful detail. When I finally stopped talking, he said, "Do you have proof?" I hesitated. I had the receipt, but that wasn't enough. "If you want justice," he told me, "if you want to come out of this with anything, you need solid proof." I hated the idea, hated pretending everything was fine while I was falling apart inside, but I knew he was right. When Samuel finally returned days later, as if nothing had happened, he didn't apologize. He didn't explain. He just walked in, dropped his bag, and made himself comfortable. At some point, he told me it had been a one-time thing, that he loved me, but I was suffocating him, and that's why it happened. And now that I had learned my lesson, it wouldn't happen again. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slap the smug look off of his face, but I didn't. I smiled. I nodded. I said, "Okay." And just like that, the game began. I'm sure it was right at that point that I started to hate him. I played the perfect wife. I cooked, cleaned. I never asked where he was going. I let him believe that he had won. It took time, but I got what I needed. One night after he came home drunk, this was weeks after everything went down, maybe a month and a half ago, I went through his phone. I found the messages, but the absolute goldmine was the voice notes. Not just one woman, but two, maybe more. I couldn't bring myself to dig further. Sweet voices, teasing, saying things that made my stomach churn. His responses were affectionate and playful, promising them things he had said to me earlier in our marriage, our happy times. I sent everything to my father. The following day, he confirmed he had enough picture proof, too. That evening, I sat across from Samuel, calm, steady, and I told him I wanted a divorce. The shift in him was immediate. He told me I was being dramatic. When I didn't back down, the panic set in. He reminded me I had nothing, no job, no friends. He told me if I left, I'd regret it. I just smiled. Then the threats started. He swore he'd ruin me, that he'd tell everyone I was the liar, that I had cheated first, that I had manipulated him. But at that point, I didn't care. I just needed to get out. And as soon as I filed, I saw him for what he was indeed. He became vicious, the kind of man that would instead burn everything to the ground and let me walk away unscathed. But I had already been through hell. There was nothing left for him to destroy. At first, he laughed when he got served the papers, smirking like he still had the upper hand. He made some comment about how I was really going through with it, as if this was just a game I was playing. I could tell he thought I was bluffing, like this was some desperate attempt to get his attention, to make him beg for me back. But the smirk disappeared when he realized I wasn't playing, that I wouldn't fall for his empty apologies, or the same manipulative nonsense he'd pulled for years. Then came the emotional tactics. One evening, as he was finally leaving the house, he looked me straight in the eye and said I would regret filing for divorce and that I was nothing without him. He made it seem like I was walking away from the only love I'd ever get, like my life would have no meaning without him in it. I didn't engage. I knew exactly what he was trying to do, get a reaction. Instead, I turned my back to him, which must have enraged him even more because he escalated his efforts. The next phase was the character assassination. I started noticing how mutual friends looked at me differently and how some acquaintances suddenly stopped responding to my messages. Then I got a call from an old friend who warned me Samuel was spreading rumors. He was telling people that I had cheated first, that I was controlling and obsessive, and that he had tried to make the marriage work, but I had pushed him away. My friend even suggested that I call people to explain myself, but I felt nothing. I knew the court of law would set the record straight. I wasn't about to waste my energy defending myself from people willing to believe his lies without calling me first to hear my side of the story. The first legal battle became a war zone. Samuel fought tooth and nail to keep everything, insisting that I wasn't entitled to a cent of what he had built. He had even the audacity to demand that I moved out of the house, claiming his hard work paid for it. But he underestimated me, or rather, he underestimated my father. We had more than enough evidence to destroy every lie he spewed. During the proceedings, my lawyer dismantled his defense piece by piece. The voice notes were the most damning, and in one, Samuel was bragging to his mistress about how he could do whatever he wanted because I was too weak to leave. In another, he was making lewd and erotic statements, in which, in between, he said I was so desperate for love that I would forgive anything. The judge didn't take any of it kindly. His attempt to paint me as an unfaithful wife crumbled the moment those recordings played in court. And when my lawyer presented proof of his ongoing infidelity, complete with timestamps and locations, thanks to my father's meticulous work, his entire defense fell apart. He lost the house. He lost the car. He had to split everything he owned in half. And despite his best efforts to manipulate the situation, the court sided with me. The final blow came when my lawyer pointed out that Samuel's slander against me could lead to a defamation lawsuit. He had no choice but to settle out of court. Even after the divorce was finalized, he refused to let go. He kept trying to turn people against me. But something shifted. The truth had a way of surfacing. Those who initially believed him started seeing through his lies. And the people who truly mattered, they had never doubted me in the first place. In the end, Samuel lost more than just the legal battle. He lost the power he once had over me. And that was the real victory. What pushed me to write this is that I'm still dealing with trauma. I needed to get it all off my chest. Even now, Samuel hasn't completely let go. He's been trying to get back into my life, showing up at the cafe where I work under the pretense of making a purchase, but then just sitting there for over an hour. I haven't blocked on everything, yet somehow he managed to find me. He's even tried to catch me during the closing time, waiting outside so I'd have no choice but to talk to him. Once, he caused a scene, saying he missed me and truly loved me. I don't know where this sudden change of heart is coming from, or how he suddenly has so much time to stalk me. But I've made it clear there's no chance in hell we're getting back together. The last time he showed up at the cafe, I warned him that I would get a restraining order if he didn't stop. Since then, I haven't seen him, but I've already filed for it. My dad did a little digging into the girl he was seen with in the picture. The lady was way younger than me, still in college, so it seems he just finds very young women who are vulnerable and love to love bomb them, make them feel like his life revolves around them, and then, when he has them in his clutches, he makes them feel smaller so that he can lord over them. He couldn't lord over his financial status, but he could lord over these types of women, someone like I once was, to be dependent on him. So, young girls out there, please be careful of men like this. So that's it from me. This is my final attempt, my own version of therapy, to get this all off my chest. And I'll admit, there's a strange satisfaction in seeing him like this. He ended our marriage, and now he gets to suffer the pain, if that pain is actually real. Oh boy. Because I can, and because, let's be honest, you're not going anywhere. That's the kind of sentence that reveals exactly who someone is at their core. He wanted to break you down so you'd feel like you had no choice but to stay. That's not love, that's control. But here's the thing, you did go somewhere. You saw the truth for what it was, and now you're here, moving forward. All of the best, OP. What would you have done in this situation? And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you next time.